Hey, Dr. Phil here, coming to you today with the real story. Let's look at some headlines. Europe deplores America's chlorinated chicken. How safe is our poultry? Headline: Why some food additives banned in Europe are still on U.S. shelves. Headline: State law targets ultra-processed food in public schools. Here's another one. Soda and candy could be banned for certain Americans in Arkansas and Indiana. Look, every day we're told that food is killing us. Now, is this just a bunch of fear-mongering, or is this the real deal?
Ultra-processed foods, the high in fats, starches, sugars, and additives, now make up 73% of the U.S. food supply.
Some processing plants use chlorine after the chicken has been slaughtered.
I'm here to tell you, no matter what you're reading, and the headlines can be spun this way or that way, I'm here to tell you that we're not eating healthy foods. And it's not just a matter of, hey, you need your vegetables today or whatever. We're eating chemicals that will kill you. I remember back in the day, they were always saying, look, you get saccharin, you get cancer, and you go say, well, what's the deal behind that? Well, if a mouse eats 500 packages a day, it'll give them cancer. Well, I'm not a mouse, and I'm eating 500 a day, so what's the big deal? That's not what I'm talking about here. There are more and more facts being learned about dangerous foods that we're feeding our families. And look, our kids don't buy food. They don't go to the grocery store and pick out what they're eating. So they're victims here. We're feeding them the foods they're eating, and they don't know any better. So it's up to us to make sure that we're feeding our children something that will keep them healthy, and we're not. We are poisoning our kids with chemicals that are in the foods we're giving them. That's not okay. We need to stop doing that. And if you're the one buying the food, if you're the mom that's buying it, or you're the dad that's buying it, come on. You're the only parents they're ever going to have. You have a duty to take care of you so your children have you. Now, we've allowed this to go on for years and years. Why? Because there's something called corporate capture. The companies that handle the foods, the companies that do the preservatives and the chemicals, spend a lot of money on Capitol Hill to make sure that it's not disrupted. And you want to know who these food companies are controlled by? They were purchased by the tobacco companies. A lot of the tobacco companies have purchased these food companies, and they're running the same playbook they did with tobacco when they were telling everybody that, hey, tobacco's okay. It's not a problem. It's okay. Trust me.
Do you trust me?
What did you say?
Well, finally, someone has said enough is enough and too much is too much.
Enough is enough.
And that happens to be RFK Jr., Bobby Kennedy Jr., Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services. Now, the legacy media never credits RFK Jr. for leading the charge to make our food safer. Now, there have been a lot of headlines, people saying that he's a conspiracy theorist and that you got problems with vaccination, and they villainize him. Look, I always say you don't have to love everything about somebody to love that person. There may be things about that person you don't like. That doesn't mean you don't love that person. Think about your kids. Think about your spouse. Think about your friends. There are things about them you may not like, but that doesn't mean you don't like the person. There may be things about your spouse you don't love, but that doesn't mean you don't love your spouse. Think about Bobby Kennedy that way. RFK Jr., he may hold views or values that you don't embrace, but that doesn't mean he doesn't also embrace values that you agree with. That's critical thinking. Think for yourself. Look at each issue for yourself. So let's talk about some things that I don't think you would disagree, and he is dealing with these things with intentionality. I happen to think he is a very science-based individual, and I think when he gets new science, he embraces new positions. So let's look at these serious issues. because I think they are very newsworthy. And it's like Maya Angelou said, you did what you knew how to do, and when you knew better, you did better. And now we know better, so let's do better. And it's media's job to fact check things, but it's not media's job to disparage or denigrate, to push their agenda. Because if you look at who's advertising on legacy media, you're going to see the people that are spending millions of dollars on these networks are the very food companies that we're talking about. Now, you already know, you've heard me say, probably ad nauseum, that no matter how flat you make a pancake, it's got two sides. Well, I probably should add that those pancakes are also ultra-processed, and they're packed with sugar, and when you feed them to your kids, it ain't healthy. Well, let's just talk about the part of RFK Jr.'s agenda that every level-headed American could or should agree on. But don't take my word for it. Listen, maybe you don't agree with me. Fact check me. Look at what I'm getting ready to tell you and fact check me. You got Google, go check it. If I'm wrong, kick it to the curb. That's all right. I'm not the repository of all knowledge. Here's the claim. The food that we're feeding our family is slowly killing us. 6 in 10 Americans have at least one chronic disease. And my contention is that a lot of that chronic disease is avoidable. It is triggered, it is brought on by the poisons we're putting in our body. The U.S. ranks #1 in chronic disease. Worst of all developed nations in 38 OECD countries. Now, what does OECD stand for? This is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. And what is that? Well, this is an intergovernmental organization that works to promote economic growth, prosperity, and sustainable development. It's headquartered in Paris, so it's outside the U.S. It's not subject to corporate capture. And they function to create these forums to collaborate and develop policies and address global challenges. And really importantly, they collect and analyze data on economic and social issues. And so when I'm comparing the U.S. to other countries, it's through the data that are part of this OECD. And when I say we're #1 in chronic disease, it's compared to these other 37 countries. Now, approximately 64% of Americans will be overweight or obese in the next 25 years. There's already a ton, no pun intended. A third of U.S. children are pre-diabetic. Now, what does that mean? It means that they're not diabetic, but they're headed that way. It means their blood sugar is running too high. They're starting to get insulin resistant. Their cholesterol is starting to creep up there. And so they're headed for diabetes. 50% of U.S. children are already overweight or obese. Half of our kids. Kids should be like free-range chickens. They should be out running around, but they're sitting on the couch looking at their phone or a video game, so they're overweight or obese. Have you ever seen a fat wolf? Have you ever seen a fat coyote? Have you ever seen a fat bobcat? No, you don't. Why? Because they eat to live. And a lot of Americans live to eat. And that is an important distinction. 77% of young men and women would not pass the physical to be in the armed services. Think about what I just said. 77% of our young people, teenagers, young 20s, could not pass the physical to get into the armed services. Now, that's a pretty low bar because they figure they're going to get you in shape once you get there. But almost 8 out of 10 aren't in good enough shape to go fight. Now, this is the first generation of children who do not have a life expectancy that exceeds that of their parents. Now, that tells you we're doing something wrong because science is getting better. Living conditions are getting better. We have air conditioning. We have all of these antibiotics. We have everything to keep people alive longer. And this is the first generation of children who are not projected to live as long as their parents. Why is that? We're giving them poison. Let's talk about those headlines I mentioned. Chlorinated chicken. Common in the U.S. poultry industry, we're dipping these chickens in chlorine. Why? Well, to reduce bacteria like salmonella. Well, you think, well, that's not such a bad idea. We don't want salmonella in our chicken. Well, no, we don't. But you don't want those chemicals in there either. We need to handle it better so it doesn't get salmonella, not dip it in a chemical that you don't want in your body. The EU and the UK banned chlorine washing because they have concerns about what it does to your body. And they don't have huge outbreaks in salmonella. We allow things in our food that countries would never allow. Here are some examples. BHA and BHT. Look for that on your labels. It's also banned in the EU, but it's legal in the U.S. Why is that? Even though the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services stated that BHA is reasonably anticipated to be a human carcinogen. What does that mean? There are not a lot of substances that have been identified as human carcinogens. That means something that creates cancer in human beings. This is one that is reasonably anticipated to be a human carcinogen, but yet we're putting it in our food chain. Where are you going to find this? Well, Frosted Flakes, stovetop stuffing, honey bunches of oats, wheat thins, Farmer John breakfast sausage links, Rice Krispies. And what about dyes? Well, the good news is that the FDA finally has banned red dye number 3 from food, and we ingest it. We've been ingesting it forever. They've known for a long time that it was bad news, but they finally voted to ban it. Not right away. They can still use it until January of 2027, even though they have known for over a decade that it's bad news bears. But not until January 27 are they going to be compelled to remove it from food. Red dye 3 is known to be a carcinogen. It's found to cause cancer in rats at high doses. Now, again, you say, well, I'm not a rat. Do I get it in high doses? Well, actually, you probably do. There's other artificial food colorings banned in the EU that are still allowed in the U.S. Blue 1, Blue 2, Green 3, Red 40, Yellow 5, and 6. Where do you find those? Skittles, Doritos, Pop-Tarts, Gatorade, Lucky Charms, Tostitos Queso, Pillsbury Crescent Rolls, and Little Debbie's. And I mentioned school lunches. In Arizona, House Bill 2164 was signed into law, banning the sale or serving of certain ultra-processed foods in public schools that receive federal funding for their meal programs. It bans foods with additives like potassium bromate, titanium dioxide, and various synthetic food dyes. That's one state. There's 49 others. Have you looked at food labels recently, like microwave pizza? It includes dough conditioners such as L-cysteine, sometimes made from animal sources. You know what those animal sources are? You're getting ready to throw up in your mouth. It's human hair, duck feathers, pig hair. Did you throw up in your mouth? Yeah, I don't blame you. Rotisserie chicken. Costco rotisserie chicken lists 11 ingredients. You know what it should have? Chicken. You eat a chicken, what it should have in it is chicken. But it's got water, salt, sodium phosphate, hydrolyzed casein, modified cornstarch, sugar, dextrose, chicken broth. Why do you need to put chicken broth in a chicken? Don't you boil a chicken to get chicken broth? Isolated soy protein, monoglycerides, and diglycerides. There are speculations it may contain carrageenan. That's a thickener. Now, there were some old studies from the 70s that said, it's okay. But more recent studies with more robust science says it can contribute to inflammation and digestive problems like IBS. So you could very well be ingesting something at least the jury's out, but it could be making you sick. I don't know. I don't think I'd be wolfing something down that I don't know if they're making it sick or not. You know, we talk about these ultra-processed foods. Do you know what that means, ultra-processed? That means they didn't like take a chicken breast and slice it. You remember that commercial, parts is parts?
Processed. Processed? That's like when they take a lot of chickens and assemble the respective parts. What parts? What parts?
Different parts.
Parts is parts.
Well, that's what it means. It's bits and pieces left over. It's kind of like they scrape them all up and press them all together into a paste. And then they get something to stick them together. And that's what you're eating. That's why you don't have to chew it very much, because it's just a bunch of parts stuck together with paste. BHA and BHT, preservatives linked to hormone disruption. Sodium nitrates, preservative that gives these cured meats their pink color. It's linked to cancer risk. Mac and cheese. How many times have you fed your kids mac and cheese? It's there in most homes. It's got a high level of chemicals called phthalates. This is a group of chemicals used to make plastics, especially polyvinyl chloride, PVC, commonly referred to as plasticizers. It creates problems with endocrine disruption. You get developmental issues, reproductive problems. I mean, it just goes on and on. These sodas are packed with sugar, which contributes to weight gain, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, kidney disease. Phosphoric acid in some sodas can increase the risk of kidney disease. So, look, I could go on, but here's the deal. We got to be careful what we're feeding our children, because they don't get a vote. We got to be careful what you're feeding yourself, because you have to be here to take care of your children. That means we need to start reading the labels. And the longer the label, the faster you need to put it down. Because those labels, if it needs a label, that's a problem. If you go get a chicken and it has a label on it, why? A chicken should have chicken in it. Beef should have beef in it. If it's got all this other stuff, there's a problem that tells you there's chemicals in there. You don't want to be eating chemicals. You don't go to a restaurant and say, oh, I'll have an order of chemicals. That's what you're getting if you don't know what you're eating. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is dealing with this with intentionality. You don't have to agree with everything he says to agree with some of the things that he says. He's addressing very controversial issues, and he's standing up against big corporations that are poisoning you and your family, and you ought to support him in doing it. I do, and that is The Real Story. Wherever you're getting The Real Story, make sure you subscribe and follow. If you're a business owner, listen up now. You won't want to miss this. Are you sure you're not leaving money on the table when it comes time to exit? Well, thousands of business owners have already used FYSI's exit strategy and valuation services to sell smart and profit big. Why? FYSI will help you plan and position your business for the maximum return. This is what separates billion-dollar companies from small businesses. And FYSI can help you secure your legacy. Time matters. So don't wait until it's too late. Use promo Dr. Phil, DRPHIL, to schedule your free $5,000 risk assessment at fysi.com/Dr. Phil or call 800-877-4000. That's promo code Dr. Phil to schedule your assessment for free. Visit fysi.com/Dr. Phil or call 800-877-4000 today.